What's up guys, Andre here, and today I'd like to take a look at debugging and monitoring your application with Laravel Telescope. This is going to be a part of my premium course, so if you like this video, definitely sign up at usefullaravelpackages.com. Alright, so let's take a look at Laravel Telescope. The website describes it as an elegant debug assistant for Laravel. It provides insight into things like requests, exceptions, logs, queries, queues, mail, notifications, and so on. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of its features now. Also be sure to check out the video of Taylor announcing and demoing it at Laracon AU. I'll link to that video below. A lot of the examples I used from this video are similar to what Taylor demoed. Okay, so I have a bunch of examples, mostly in my routes file right here. But I have yet to install Telescope, so let's go ahead and do that first. So let's go into the documentation page. And let us composer require Laravel Telescope. Let's do that real quick. Okay, next is to run the Telescope install command. Let's do that. Okay, and that published service provider assets and a config. Cool. And now we have to migrate. And I already set up my database and my credentials in my environment file. I also set the app URL. And I have some users. I have the auth scaffolding set up in Laravel. And I have 3 users in here, because we're going to be looking at models as well. So let's migrate. And that added some entries into our database right here. Telescope entries and Telescope monitoring. Okay, so now if you go into our app, and by default, if you're in local development environment, and we are, it's local right here, then you can just go to /telescope. This is the app. /telescope, and you'll see the UI there. Let me just make this a bit bigger. So yeah, let's take a look at some of the files that it created. So config telescope is where some of the settings are. So down here, telescope. And we will leave this the way it is. There's also a telescope service provider. And the first thing I want to do is change it to night mode. There is a nice dark mode here, and it looks pretty good, so we'll stick with that. So what else is in here? So if you scroll down here, you can also set the permissions on who can view it. Like I said, by default in local, anyone can view it. But if you want to change that, or if you still want to use this in production, which we'll take a look at later, then this is where you would define who gets access. Okay, so let's go into our app in the browser over here. Sorry, it's not in here. Let me just open a new tab here and just go to the main site. And let's just log in. Let's hit a few routes actually. I'm gonna log in. I have a user named user@user.com. and password. Okay, so I'm logged in, and the first feature is requests, and as you can see, there's a new button here that says load new entries, and this will just show every single request that was made in our app just now. So you can see these are all the routes I hit, and you can dig down and see more information about that request. For example, if there's a logged in user, then it will show here. And down here, there's more information about the headers, the session, the response, and also the queries that are run. So that's pretty cool. So up here, if you turn this on, it will load the requests automatically. So if I go here and just go back home, and let's go back here, you'll see that it loads automatically. So yeah, a lot of these other features always link back to the request, specifying which request it was related to. Okay, next is commands. So as you can see, we did a migrate command. Let's do a few more here. Let's do PHP artisan inspire. And let's make a model too. PHP artisan make model, let's say to do, and let's do /a so it generates other things as well, controller and migration. And yep, as you can see, they loaded here, the ones we just ran, and you can go in and see the information about them, the arguments, and so on and so forth. Cool. Okay, so let's see what's next. The schedule. So I already have a scheduler running on my computer. And let me just go into here, HTTP. So console kernel, and let's add a command here. So let's just run the inspire command every minute. So let's say every minute, and let's make sure to store the output, store output. Okay, so if I save this, and there you go. You see that after some time passed, this showed up, and you can see the output here. So this is a good way to debug your scheduler and seeing if it's running correctly. And if you go back and if we wait a few seconds here, since I have it set to every minute, there you go. There is the next command. So if you're not sure how to run it locally, I actually just learned this for this demo. Let's do cron tab -e and put this command in the first line. And that should run on your computer every minute. These stars represent every minute. And you can change this interval if you like. And if you have a server, that should, like if you're using Forge, that should be set up for you automatically. And I do use Forge, so. All right, what's next? Jobs. So I have a generic job here called some job, and it is taking in the user as in the constructor, and it's sleeping for 4 seconds, and it's running a bunch of logs, and that's so we can look at the log feature as well. But right now I actually have Horizon running. If you look here, there's Horizon running, and in this other tab over here, there is Horizon. So I also have a route that dispatches those jobs. So if I go into my routes file, what's it called? So job / the number, and then that's just going to dispatch a certain number of jobs. So let's do that. I'm going to do job / let's say 5. Sorry, jobs / 5. Okay, let's take a look at Horizon. So you can see they show up here, and I think they passed. Yeah, they all passed here. So yeah, Horizon and Telescope are very similar in this sense. Horizon has more features. You can do things like balance your queue and have different rules for that. But in Telescope, you can view the jobs that went through and drill down into each one and see more details, like which user ran it. And there's some tags associated, similar to how Horizon works, which queue it ran on, which connection it's using. And I'm not sure why it's pending. That should be completed. So yeah, it could be a bug. Telescope is still fairly new and continually getting updates. Okay, let's look at the next one for exceptions. So no exceptions were thrown yet. So I have a route here for exceptions, I think. Yeah, so just throw a generic exception. So let's hit that route. / exceptions. So there you go. And you should see that here. Cool. And just like everything else, you can drill down and see more information about the exception. If it was tagged, or like if a user that was logged in triggered it, Here's a message, and oh, here's a cool small feature. If it's triggered multiple times, so I'm refreshing a few times here, then it won't keep showing up on the list because that's going to take up too much space, but you can see the number of occurrences went up, and you can go in and just see the other occurrences here. So that's a pretty cool small feature. Okay, so what's next? Let's take a look at logs. And I don't know why my logs didn't show. I ran that job that had the logs run. Let's try that again. So I'm going to run the jobs route again. So jobs, let's say 3 this time. Class user not found. What the hell? Oh, sorry. Okay, let's try again. Okay. So Horizon processes them. Okay. But does... Yeah, I don't know why it stays pending. Let's see if the logs come in. Okay, so I'm going to restart Horizon and try again. Okay, let's run those jobs again. 3 jobs. See if they go in here. They do. Okay, so now they're processed. Cool. And now the logs should show up. And there they are. Awesome. And I think all the other ones ran too. So yeah, there was something wrong with my queue worker, so I just restarted Horizon. And now everything works as expected. So yeah, all I did in that job was just log the different types of logs with a job, some job. So just these different types. So emergency, alert, and they show up as different color tags here, and you can drill down as everything else. There's not much, it's just the log message. Cool. This is a good alternative to just going to your server and dumping out the Laravel log files. Okay, let's look at dumps. So everyone's favorite Laravel command is probably the dd die and dump, the best debugging tool ever. And Laravel 5.7 introduced a new dump feature, which allowed you to debug and dump data without stopping the execution of the script, which is very handy. Let me just show you how that works quickly and how then that relates to this dump screen. So let me just click off this and you'll see why in a second. So I'm going to run the PHP artisan dump server. So that's running. And in my routes, I have a route called dumps, I think. Where is it? Here. And it's just grabbing 2 users, dumping the first one and dumping the second one, and then just returning a message. So since our dump server is running, then if I go to dumps, then we shouldn't see the dumps here. We should just see the return message. Okay, and we do. And we see it in our dump server here. So that's pretty cool. But if we don't have this dump server running, I'm going to Control C out of it. So I'm not running the server. Now the dumps will appear on the screen. So there we go. So it works pretty much similarly to the dumps tab in Telescope, where if you are on the dumps tab and go here, then this should not show up because we're on the dumps tab. So there you go. And it appears here. Cool. But if we're not on the dumps tab, then it will show up in the browser. So yeah, that's a pretty cool feature and can be very handy for debugging and not interrupting your script. So yeah, that's pretty much it. You can also see the request that came from. So if I click on this, it goes to the request that dump came from, and you can view all the information about the request. All right, queries. So as you expect, every query that happens is logged here, and you can again drill down to the request where it happened, and you get a nicely formatted raw query that happened here. And there's also a cool feature which allows you to monitor slow queries. So let me show you that. I'm not sure if it's in the config or the service provider. Let's see. So this is the config. Is it in here? No, it is not. It's in the service provider then. No, it's in the config. It should be in the config. Okay, right here. So this lets you specify what a slow query is. So right now, all of our queries are running pretty quickly, less than 1 millisecond. Obviously, this would be higher if it was on a real production database, but we can specify what a slow query is. So let's set it to really low. If you look at here, some of them are below 0.5 and some of them are above 0.5. And if they are above 0.5 or whatever threshold you set here, then it will appear in red here. So let's go into our app. So I'm going to hit this route and this should have some queries. And it shows up because we're not in the dump tab. Obviously this should have some queries. Logging out. Let's log out and log in again. Okay, so that should have put a few queries in there. So let's go ahead and see. So load new entries. So this should be red. Did I save that? Okay, there you go. I just refreshed. Here's all the queries that just happened, and the ones that are above 0.5 milliseconds are in red. And you can go ahead and investigate what's going on. Now, personally, I still think using Laravel Debug Bar, which is a similar package which has been out for a very long time, I still think that's better for queries because that, if you use that before, I'll probably make a video on that too, but you'll see that every page you go to in your app, there's a little debug bar down on the bottom, and that allows you to monitor the number of queries on whatever page you're on, and you can easily detect n+1 queries better because each page has a number of queries. So say you just go on different pages and you see the number of queries that ran on that page. If it's unusually high, then you can see that there might be n+1 issues on this specific page. But for Telescope, it just dumps everything into here. There's no real numbers onto how many queries on which page you're on. So yeah, just personal preference. So yeah, you can definitely combine them. They should still work together nicely. All right, let's take a look at models next. So this happened 2 minutes ago. This is just when I logged in, and since that updates the updated that field, then it tags it as an update. But this records all the CRUD options for all your models. And again, it goes back to the request and some other information here. So let me show you what I mean. So if I register another user, actually, let me delete a user. Yeah, let's delete a user because I have a route for that in my code. So right here, if I hit delete, it's going to delete the third user, and that will show up in our models file. Models tab, I mean. So let's hit delete. Okay, deleted, and you should see that here. Cool. And if we register another user, so let me just log out here and register a user. Since registering creates a user, that should be added there too to the model. Hi, password. Okay, cool. And then that should show up here. There you go, cool. Okay, let's take a look at the events. So as I was doing stuff, specifically in Horizon, there were events that were raised. So you can drill down, look at the events, and you can see the associated listeners with them. You can drill down to the request. You can see if there was a job associated with it. You can view the job and it goes to the job. So yeah, all the information you need to know about events go here. And I think I have a route for events too. It also knows if it's a broadcast event. If you're using something, say like Pusher, and you broadcast events. So I have an event called some event, and it should implement should broadcast. So let me just put that in. So implements should broadcast, and then let's hit that route. So events just raises this event and it just passes in a user. Is it grabbing a user? Okay, it wasn't my example, but I forgot to put it here. So let's quickly pass in the user. So I'm just going to use this handy package user. Oops. Okay, and it's type into here. Let's import it. Okay, and this should be public. Okay, so now let's hit that route and we should see that it's tagged as a should broadcast event. So back to let's go to events, event fired, and load that new entry. There you go. So you can see that is tagged as a broadcast event. Okay, now let's look at mail. This is easily one of my favorite features along with the dump tab. So personally, I use and love Mailtrap for testing email. It's easy to use and the closest thing to sending a real email and gives me confidence that emails actually get sent. However, if you're still early in development and just want to see your emails being sent out, as well as a visual representation of how they look, yes, I know you can also view the contents of your email in the browser, but that kind of interrupts your application code. So this way you can just set your mail driver to log and inspect the email right in this tab over here. So let's make sure, I think I have it set to log. So where's my mail driver? Okay, it's set to log. So let's go ahead and trigger some emails. So in the forgot password authentication stuff, that sends out an email. So let's trigger that. Let's log out. So if you go to login, forgot your password. So let's type in the user and let's send it. Okay. So in mail, if I refresh, there it is right there. And you can look at it again, same as before. You see all the information about it, to, from, which mailable it's using. And you can actually download the .eml file and view it in different mail clients if you like. Again, you can view the request that came from, if a user was logged in, or not logged in, but the user that triggered the email. And here is the actual email. So you can quickly inspect it. This should work because I set the app URL in our environment file, so this should actually work. And yeah, it's a really handy way to test emails when you're still early in development. Okay, what is next? Let's look at notifications. So as you can see, that reset password is a notification as well in Laravel. But I have another one in here. What did I call it? I call it invoice paid. And usually you would pass in an invoice here, but I don't have a model for invoice, so it's not passing anything in, but we can still see the information. So notifications in here, it's right here. And you can have different channels. By default, there's only mail, I think SMS using Nexmo, and database notifications, but there's a whole bunch of other drivers which you can use, like Slack or Twilio for a different text message service provider. And yeah, like as you expect, this just has all the information about the notification that was triggered. So let's run this URL. Was it notification? Yeah, notifications. Notifications. Okay, and then we should see a new one here, right there. And you can see the channel here. This would obviously change if it was a different channel. And yeah, as you expect, all the information about that notification. Cool. Okay, the cache. As you can see, there's some hits and misses when we were logging in. There's some caching going on there. But I think I have a route for cache as well. I do. So all it's doing is remembering the user for 1 minute. So if I hit this, it's going to look for it in the cache. It's not going to find it, so it's going to set it for 1 minute, and you'll see that reflected in the cache tab. So let's hit this cache, user cache for 1 minute, and there's the new entries there, and there you go. You saw that it wasn't in the cache, and so it set it. So I'm going to wait a minute. Actually, no, if I refresh this now it's hitting the cache because it hasn't been a minute yet. So I refreshed it 3 times. You should see 3 entries here for hit, okay? But it's only cached for a minute, so I'm going to wait a few more seconds after a minute has passed, and then it will miss and set again because it's been past 1 minute.
A few moments later.
Okay, so it's been over a minute. Let's go in here, refresh this again. It should be a miss and it should set it again. So new entries, there you go. So yeah, good insight on the cache here. And Redis is very similar. So if you want to store information outside of the database in Redis, this gives insight onto the Redis commands that have happened. So I have another route here for Redis. It's just setting my name and getting my name. And you need to run this command for Redis events to happen and to show up in Telescope. I just put it in here. You should definitely put this in a service provider of some sort. And yeah, let's see if this works. So let's go to Redis. There you go, Redis item set, and there they are there. Cool. So generally speaking, you would mainly use this for development, but it can be used for a lightweight monitoring service for your production app. So if it's in production, it's obviously not going to store everything because that is a ton of information, but it still stores by default some important information which you can use to monitor your application. So let's first set our environment to production. And now stuff's not going to be recorded. Well, not everything's going to be recorded. So if I go to the main page, hit it a few times, go to login, none of that is going to be shown in the request. Actually, I also don't have permission anymore because we're in production, so that's not going to work. So now you have to go to your service provider and set this. So let me just set the user I have in here. I'm just going to put that user's email address. So this user should have access when they're logged in. Obviously, you would make sure that the user is an admin in a real app. So let's go in here and let's log in. So user@user.com and password. So now I'm logged in and now I should be able to access this. Okay, and I am. But now, so yeah, you saw me hit all these routes, but they're not being recorded because we are now in production. So if you go into your service provider again, right here is where it specifies if it's local, then record everything. But sorry, not this, this. So yeah, if it's local, return everything. But if it's not local, then only return this stuff. So if it's an exception, a reportable exception, if it's a failed job, if it's a scheduled task, or if it has a monitor tag, which I'll show you that in a second as well. So yeah, exceptions will still go through. So if I hit my exceptions route here, world is going to end exceptions. There you go, just now. So these exceptions still get logged. Failed jobs will get logged, and what I want to show you is has monitor tag. So you can also monitor specific tags. So each model gets a tag. So it's going to be model name : the ID. But another thing that gets tagged is logged in users. So that would be tagged as auth. So if I monitor auth1, monitor that, and I'm logged in as user ID 1 right now. Now, whatever user ID 1 does, it's going to be logged in here. So you saw earlier that it wasn't being logged, but now it will be. So you'll see if I go to, wait, I'm not logged in yet, so these won't be logged. Oh, actually, I am logged in, so you'll see a few more requests go in because I'm monitoring that tag, and there they are right there. So cool. So this is for instances when there's something weird going on with a certain user. Then you can monitor the tag and see what's going on. So there you have it, guys. We've managed to take a look at Laravel Telescope to debug and keep an eye on the things that are going on in your application. Definitely an excellent way to debug your application. So you would probably just have this in any other tab or another monitor open at all times, so you can quickly keep an eye on everything in your app. Please like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already done so. Thanks for watching, guys. See you in the next one. Okay, thanks. Bye.